We're just a few short weeks away from the release of the Nintendo Switch 2, and we've already seen all the footage of Mario Kart World, we've seen Donkey Kong Bonanza, we've heard all the impressions from people who have played the system, but there's one game that people aren't really talking about.
It's Ridge Racer! Ridge Racer!
That's right, it's Arcade Archives 2 Ridge Racer. This is a game from the fine people over at HAMSTER. And if you don't know about HAMSTER, they've been at it porting arcade games since PlayStation 4 days, basically. And then they moved on to the Switch day one, where they supported it by starting with the porting of all the Neo Geo games steadily over a year or so. And then they started getting into Nintendo's library of arcade games like VS Super Mario and VS Punch-Out! But after that, and over the last couple of years, they've really started digging into some deep cuts in arcade history. They've really brought out so many games that haven't seen the light of day before on home consoles. And the stuff I really like is a lot of stuff from the 90s, from the early 90s. Sure, you'd think with my age I'd probably like older games, but I think the 90s is really when arcade gaming peaked. For instance, here we have a very underrated Konami beat 'em up, in my opinion, Metamorphic Force. It's not one that comes up a lot, but it's basically kinda Altered Beast on steroids. You play as these heroes that can power up and turn into animals. And as you can see here, it's also one of the many of the classic arcade games that support 4-player. And that's really easy to get going on a Nintendo Switch. With one Switch you have 2 Joy-Cons already set up for 2 players, and if someone has another Switch or a couple of Pro controllers, you're set to get in on some fun local 4-player action. Another really great 4-player game in my opinion here is Newman Athletics, which is a sports game, kind of like track and field, event-driven sports game, but for superheroes.
Thank you!
Hands in the air, everyone free!
Dead Connection is another really cool game, one that blatantly rips off The Godfather and The Untouchables and just all kinds of 1940s gangster action. And then you have this single screen action where you just run around and try to take out all the enemies before getting faced off by a boss. Lots of stuff to blow up and lots of stuff to shoot, with very charming graphics. There's also a game here like Riot, which I wasn't aware of until recently. It's a run and gun game much like Metal Slug, but it has a really fun gimmick to it, where enemies will appear in the background and the foreground. You kind of have to switch your field of fire to accommodate where the enemies are coming from. And then the stages will have these cover points that you can duck behind to keep yourself protected. But moving on to Arcade Archives 2, it's apparent that HAMSTER is now ready to move into the world of 3D gaming. And when 3D games started appearing in the arcade, it was a big transitional kind of thing that went on at that point, because home consoles were getting just so powerful that arcades were slowly starting to go out of business, so they had to kind of reinvent themselves, not just through the 3D graphics themselves, but they also kind of have to innovate, and they started putting out more kind of gimmick machines. Ridge Racer, for instance, is one such gimmick machine. It's obviously a driving cabinet in the arcades where you would sit down, and they're replicating this here in the home version by allowing support for racing wheels and even a gear shift and clutch, which was something that was available in an EX version of Ridge Racer. But one specific genre that became synonymous with arcades, especially once they really went into 3D, would have to be the light gun game. And with the Nintendo Switch 2, it's like a perfect time to start porting the light gun games from the arcade onto the Switch 2. On the Switch 1 we had a few tries to bring the light gun game to the console, most notably House of the Dead remake, which I want to say came out first for the Nintendo Switch. It was kind of horrible to play because you had to rely on gyro, which is massively unprecise. So what you would do is that you had a dedicated button which would reset the cursor to the middle of the screen. Not very comfortable way to play House of the Dead. But the PC version is fantastic. Not only does it have improved graphics, obviously, but you can play it with a mouse. And what's the new feature of the Switch 2? It's the mouse mode of the Joy-Cons. And not only do you get one mouse with each Nintendo Switch 2, you get two. So it's perfect for the two-player games out there. And I could easily see HAMSTER bring out some of the real classics like Virtua Cop, like Time Crisis, because we've never had real arcade versions of those on a home console. But then I started thinking, hey, this is HAMSTER, and I know they bring out all these deep cuts. So I started thinking, what could be some cool light gun games that we haven't seen before? Some of the more obscure ones from the arcades that you don't see very often now that arcades aren't really a thing. So I started looking into Technoparrot on the PC, and Technoparrot is an emulator which allows you to play a lot of the current and I say current, but like 3D games from within like the last 10-15 years, maybe even 20 years now that I'm thinking about it. But there's a handful of games that I thought of that would be excellent on the Nintendo Switch 2.
Why did the elevator stop?
They rushed over.
For instance, here we have Elevator Action Invasion. The gimmick of this arcade machine was, as you can see, it was a vertical screen. But the reason for that was that it had two massive elevator doors that would move back and forth. Mechanical elevator doors in front of the screen. And you can emulate that in Technoparrot, and you could certainly emulate that in a Switch 2 version of the game. And hey, maybe you can even have a mode where it's kind of in a Tate mode, where you take the Switch 2 out of the dock, flip it vertically, and then enjoy the game that way.
How to play. Use controller in this game.
Shoot balls. Hit pins. Aim and shoot at the center of the balls. Ready? Go!
House of the Dead, I'm greedy. I want all of the House of the Dead games on Switch 2. But here we have House of the Dead EX, which I think is a game that nobody really talks about when it comes to the House of the Dead franchise. It's a love story between a failed experiment and this zombie guardian, both zombies essentially, who have to escape from other zombies, and it has a very lovey-dovey feeling to it, where you can compete in all these kind of mini games where they use the foot pedal and the gun to complete various tasks. And of course you don't have a foot pedal out of the box with Nintendo Switch 2, but there's certainly enough buttons on the Switch 2 that you could have a foot pedal with that. Now, House of the Dead is probably the most ported series. Almost all of the games have been ported multiple times to more modern systems, especially 2, not as much 1, not as much, I want to say 4 or 5. But House of the Dead Scarlet Dawn, the latest House of the Dead game, hasn't seen a home version yet. So that would be another game that would be perfect to put out on Switch 2. And again, if they wanted to do like insane value for the money, someone could put all these games together in the House of the Dead collection.
This place isn't going to last long.
Here, shoot this.
Would you do something? We're going to crash!
Whoa!
You two, keep us on! They're coming!
Here's another game with a more relaxed party feeling than zombie horror. It's Let's Go Island. Just a really fun island adventure game. Just wholesome fun for the whole family, as I see it.
Whoa! Whoa!
There's also Lethal Enforcers 3, which is a really interesting light gun game. This is one where you are constantly moving forward, but then you can stop and take cover behind your shield to shoot enemies and to reload. But you're both scored on shooting enemies and also making it to the end of the stage or to the checkpoint as quickly as possible. And that's a really fun, light-hearted style where you're not just a policeman, but you get to play all sorts of people in government and law enforcement, taking down criminals and saving the day. One of my absolute go-to light gun games on the Nintendo Wii was the home conversion of Ghost Squad by Sega. This is a game that feels sort of like an evolution of Virtua Cop, and they made a sequel to it that is so far has only stayed in the arcade, called Operation Ghost. I'm not super familiar with the arcade version of Ghost Squad, but in the home version you could play through it multiple times because you would unlock multiple paths, and maybe you can do that in Operation Ghost as well. As you complete the game and improve your score, you start unlocking more and more stuff. And that really makes the game replayable and fun to play. I mentioned Time Crisis earlier, so why not let us get Time Crisis 5. We've gotten the rest of the series on home consoles all the way up to 4, but they should be more than welcome to bring them out on the Switch again. Because 4 especially is a little bit tricky to play, especially if you're playing with the GunCon 3 controller, because you have to set up all these sensors around your TV, and it's not really a bother. They made a version for the PlayStation Move, which works fine. But Time Crisis 5 is a fun game, and it's ridiculous. It's a game that has 2 pedals, not just 1. But again, on the Switch controller you have more than enough buttons to accommodate that, going into cover on different pedals. And it is a little bit over the top for some Time Crisis fans maybe, but I'd still like to see it brought home.
Pesky little flies! Action!
A game that's a little bit more grounded, but then again maybe not really, is Wartran Troopers. When you just look at it casually, it seems like a hardcore tactical military rail shooter, but the presentation is just really ridiculous, and it has one of the most epic intro songs to any of these games. So that's it. That's what I would like to see from HAMSTER now that they've gone into Arcade Archives 2 and into the world of the third dimension. We'll probably see a lot of other 3D games from them, not just light gun shooters and racing games. But what are some games that you would like to see? Drop me a comment below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and have a great day. Bye.